Hello, and welcome to Decem-Baron 7. So, I'm going to continue what I was talking about with the United They Stood, Depraved They Fell campaign, the Revolutionary War campaign, as I often call it. I said that I was just starting to get into some really crazy stuff that was happening. I've told this story, like this particular story that I'm going to tell today, or a couple stories I've told on multiple occasions, especially the first one. And the first bit, it was just wild. And we still laugh about it, like, to this day. It's fantastic. Anyway, I concluded last time that the party of evil characters had, they were going to the Caribbean to fetch some treasure of some kind. And they were coming up. They were fighting against a storm giant, the most powerful of all giants, about like 28 feet tall, something like that. They were able to defeat the frost giant. Why do I keep saying frost giant? They were able to defeat the storm giant down there. And around this time, I had discovered a fun table, of possibilities for what could be in a giant's bag. Like, you know, if you loot the giant's body, what could you find, kind of a thing. There were all sorts of, like, you know, users like fan submissions to Wizards of the Coast for this kind of thing, and so I rolled on it, like pretty high on the table. It was something like, actually, you know what? I'm going to see if I can look it up now. Part of Dragon magazine. What's in the bag? Oh, that's the poll. No, I want the. Oh, here we go. Dragon Plus issue number 11. I think. Or not. Here we go. D100 items in a giant's bag. Yeah, Dragon Plus issue 11. Or not. Maybe I was looking at the wrong page there. Or is it? Frick, where the heck is it? Dragon Plus magazine. I'm on the website now. If I can just find issue 11, the D&DIY issue. Where's the table of contents? What's in your bag? There it is. Excellent. So it was essentially well, maybe not exactly a table, but it was a list of 100 things you can find in a giant's bag. And I rolled a 97. So what I read was a wooden. What I read that they found among the other things the storm giant had was a wooden spoon whose handle is carved to resemble a crescent moon. The spoon perfectly slices any food stirred with it. So, you know, you stir with this. You know, I imagine since it was a giant. Again, I didn't have a great concept of what how big D&D giants really were. I still had the mentality of, like, back when, like, Fjord Niflheim was, like, you know, climbing the giant's ear and everything. I thought the giants were that big, and so I imagined this spoon was huge. So among other things, they found this wooden spoon. The handle it looks like a crescent moon, and the spoon perfectly slices any food stirred with it. That was what I read. And so the party got this big spoon. And for a little while, they had been trying to assassinate George Washington, and they had been failing. Washington has a few tricks of his own. I did make him a paladin of some kind, and so he's able to, you know, take care of himself and, you know, keep himself safe and everything. This item alone led to the entire group thinking of a very, very ridiculous, silly, unique assassination plan. I call this a plot/pot against Washington. Or a vexing plot with a mixing pot or something. I don't know, whatever. It really was vexing. How did they come up with this stuff? But they're like, you know what? We can use this to assassinate Washington. I'm like, what? what are you talking about? You know, like make some big pot of stew and like have him jump in it, and, like you're gonna stir that, and they're like, yeah. Basically, what they decided was they were because Jack McDonough was still the president of the United States, or the supreme leader of the United States, whatever. He and the other player characters, the other anti-heroes, would essentially set up some sort of new tradition or ceremony. They wanted to have a ceremony that, you know, in the public eye, it was going to be a ceremony that looked like it, you know, celebrated America as a melting pot, you know, right? Even though in real life, in real history, the melting pot thing was later than that, I think. But melting pot anyway. Melting pot of ideas and people and cultures and everything. And to celebrate that, they would have this ginormous pot of stew. And they would have the Vice President Washington, just as sort of as a symbolic way of a government representative committing to that idea, have as part of the ceremony of the public watching, to have Washington dive into the pot of stew, and then to stir the pot of stew with this wooden spoon, which otherwise looks innocent, so the public wouldn't suspect a thing, and then serve the stew to the public. They figured that since the spoon perfectly slices any food that it's stirred with, it would slice Washington if he was in the stew. So they set this whole thing up. I was just flabbergasted and really impressed with this. That alone makes this a great story, right? The conclusion of it is probably a little anticlimactic. I will say the players are really excited to do this. Washington just suspected something, but he agreed to dive into. He agreed to do the dive and everything, and they're like, okay. So he jumped in. He's in the stew now. He done it, and I said, yep. George Washington makes a lovely dive right into the stew, and so then Jordan, the player of Jack McDonough, is just like, yes, stirring the pot. Yes, do it. He made big motions like that. It's like, yeah. To finally get rid of Washington. So, and the rest of the party, the rest of the players are just like, you know, celebrating, like, yeah, we did it. In the end, I know this is going to be a little anticlimactic. I didn't want them to kill Washington. I said, the players kind of suspected that Washington was kind of like suspicious of them. The Washington that dived in was actually like an illusory version, copy of Washington. The real Washington was observing everything from like inside the White House in secret. So they didn't actually kill him. They end up, I guess, despite all their attempts, including that crazy one, they were not able to. They were not able to get rid of him. But yeah, that was such a great moment there. Before I go to the conclusion of United They Stood, Depraved They Fell, I have to say, a year and a half after this campaign concluded, I looked up that table again, just as I was like sharing the story and whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, I should look up that table of Giants bag items again. See if I can still find it or whatever. And I can. You can find it again on Dragon Plus magazine, issue 11. The article is titled "What's in Your Bag," and item 97 is the item in question. I read it again. Here's the absolutely redonkulously hilarious part. Here's what the item description actually says. A wooden spoon whose handle is carved to resemble a crescent moon. The spoon perfectly spices any food stirred with it. So at one time, years ago, I misread it to say it slices the food, when actually the intention was that it only spices the food. That one mistake, happy accident, I suppose, was the thing that spurred the whole pot plot Okay, that whole ridiculous assassination attempt, which unfortunately failed, but the execution was fantastic, and the players loved it anyway, all the way through. That was the clincher right there. The spoon didn't. The spoon that I made, the spoon that I described to them in this campaign, did not spice; it sliced. And I shared this with those players like later on. You know, again, it was like a year and a half after the campaign had concluded, and we're just like, "Are you kidding me? It would have gone so much differently." That would never have happened if I had read it as intended. So I'm very, some dungeon masters, myself included, we make so many mistakes, and the best mistakes are the ones that you just sort of like roll with, and and that kind of thing. So if you read if you get a number wrong on if you're a new dungeon master, or if you're a dungeon master in general, and you if you get the stats wrong or something, or if you realize you're not fully prepared, you have to sort of like make stuff up on the fly and everything, or even goodness forbid you read a description wrong. Honestly, that's fine. Depending on the nature of your campaign, it's your campaign. It's yours and the player's campaign. The whole point is for all of you to have fun. And by golly, that mistake made that campaign that session so much more fun than it would have been otherwise. So let that be a lesson that mistakes are good in Dungeons and Dragons. Any like rules are really guidelines anyway. Literally, like, it says in several officially published D&D 5th edition books by Wizards of the Coast that the books, like, rules are meant to be broken. All the rules, literally every rule anywhere is a suggestion. They're meant to guide your play and, kind of, channel your energy and kind of like, settle things and settle things that need to be settled, or introduce luck where it needs to be, things like that. So that was one of the truly ridiculous things, and probably one of the best moments of the whole campaign, honestly. As stupid as that is. But let's move on to the conclusion of the campaign, shall we? So this felt like a really special campaign, honestly. It was just like so much great stuff has happened. So much great stuff had happened. Silly, epic, it's just like we were all so invested in it, and it was just a lot of fun. I wanted to have some kind of good conclusion because history is history. You could go on as long as you wanted. You could have gone on into the War of 1812. You could have gone on to into the early to mid 1800s, which would be like the Civil War. You could have gone on past that into industrialization, and so on and so forth. You could make your own America like this. Maybe I'll introduce this setting in some later campaign of mine. I don't know. But we needed some kind of conclusion. We wanted to move on to the next thing. We felt that we had reached some kind of, like, around this point with the whole plot against Washington. We needed, like, the campaign needed one final hurrah, one final sort of like plot hook for the fully evil level 20 characters to sort of like, have last hurrah, apart from the national debt Tarask fight we already had. So, I did not know what to do. I was describing this with my then girlfriend Blaze, now my wife, and I was just kind of thinking, like, what do I do? Like, what sort of like inspired event or plot hook could I introduce at the very end of this campaign? I remember her specifically, like, she asked me a few other things about the campaign and how I used, like American folklore and mythological creatures and, fantasy, American, it's heavily inspired by American history and all that. And she came up with a brilliant suggestion. She said, why don't you have the characters go back to Britain and fight King Arthur and Merlin? And I'm like, what? So Blaze loves legends and mythology and and also fan fictions as well. She remembered that there's part of the nebulous Arthurian legend, King Arthurian legend, is that King Arthur is held in some place called Avalon, and he would come back from the dead to rescue his kingdom, Britain, from some great evil of some kind. And it would be a natural progression and it would make sense, honestly. And actually, at this point, one of the reasons the players went to the Caribbean in the first place was to further their conquest. They wanted to, have America be an empire. So they were, and so the next logical step was to try to invade and conquer the, economic behemoth that was Britain. But Britain had gone through so many wars at this point against America and even like against our European neighbors that they were they were less well off, shall we say, financially and with resources. So President Jack McDonough and his cabinet, I guess, thought this would be an ideal time to go attack England themselves and claim it for their own. And that would be the perfect opportunity for King Arthur to come back and try to rescue and try to save Britain. So, brilliant. I thought that was just like a really great, like it's not as huge as a national debt Tarask, or maybe a storm giant, or like, goodness forbid, the pot plot against Washington. But it would be a satisfying conclusion, I thought. And honestly, it was. I had them. So the characters arrived on the British shores, and just as soon as they arrived, two figures approached. There was a regal knight in shining armor, and there was an old gentleman in wizard robes, in some sort of scholarly robes. That was King Arthur and Merlin. I don't remember what I used for those people, their stats. I used some powerful, like, paladin and wizard, stats and everything. So they were outnumbered, but I did make these two. I did make King Arthur and Merlin fairly powerful to provide a generally even match, maybe a little bit on the easy side, I don't know. But you may remember that I said that the player, Jordan, the one who played Jack McDonough in this campaign, who betrayed the party in Here There Be Signs, Here There Be Dragons, who betrayed the party in the Warhammer 40k campaign. This is the third and last betrayal story I have of the player, Jordan. Except this is an interesting one. So he betrayed the party in the last bit. He was having, he wanted to have some sort of epic, he had some things building with his character of Jack McDonough. Jack McDonough had a wish that he was using against some sort of he had some other enemy or something like that. He used this wish to try to eliminate this enemy and their entire family line or something like that. Jack McDonough, even though he kind of had these the evil Hulk moments, he was still some sort of scholar, evil scholar and politician, president, master of America, whatever. However, Jack McDonough still revered Merlin as a character of magic, of alchemy, and all that kind of stuff. And so the fact that Merlin was there just kind of made Jack McDonough pause, and he realized he did not want to fight for evil anymore. He did not want to be evil anymore. He could not go against Merlin. He essentially betrayed the evil party by going back to the side of good. So, which is a fascinating, great, third betrayal, essentially, over our career together, if you want to call it career, our time together playing Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. There's a time when, Merlin was killed, but Jack McDonough felt that Merlin needed to be taken to the lawful, good, holy plane of Mount Celestia. And so Jack McDonough teleported there to bring Merlin's body there. Merlin's body and his book there so that Merlin can, live his afterlife in Mount Celestia. So a powerful celestial came down, a Solar or something, and came down and accepted Merlin and basically strongly rebuked Jack McDonough for even setting foot at the foot of Mount Celestia as such an evil, depraved character. Be gone, you foul, filthy creature. And that just humbled Jack McDonough so much. Before he left, he had one final request. He sort of whimpered out, like, can I at least, like, have Merlin's spellbook, please? And the Solar's like, no. Be gone. So Jack McDonough was gone, and he could not fight with the rest of... he could not continue in his evil path anymore. The rest of the party, the rest of the characters disagreed. They defeated Arthur as well. And they each went their separate ways. McDonough was the one who had the aspirations to conquer England, but because he wasn't continuing that path anymore, that didn't really happen. And they all kind of went their separate... All the characters kind of went their separate ways. And that is how the Revolutionary War campaign, United They Stood, Depraved They Fell, concluded. Man. Just an incredible, impressive, wild ride that we all just had a tremendous amount of fun with. I'm about 21 minutes right now. I certainly could have ended earlier last time, so I'm going to end now. I feel like I've reached the good conclusion of this fun campaign, so as always, thank you very much for listening. I'll see you tomorrow. All the best.